Peregrino Properties.
Golden Coast Developers is an international and national-based real estate development firm with multi-sector involvement in technology and procurement. I would say we're predominantly a new entrant into the market, but in terms of the growth prospects, we're doing medium-scale projects throughout Ghana currently. I was predominantly in America for about 12 years, working on Wall Street. I was at the top of, I'd say, the financial sector when it came to my work arrangements. But what really called me about the African story was I wanted to be a part of the new growth prospects. I wanted to be a part of the ground build out for all things that were going forward in Ghana and Africa at large. So I decided to come back in 2017, and initially we kicked off our real estate portfolio, but we've gotten ourselves into a few other things as well. And there's nothing more real than real estate, so that was what drove me to step in the arena. We really came in looking to do the home automation, the smart features, and that was something that was not traditional. We've infused technology in our overall platform. So our goal was to ensure that when you live in a house, you have more than just the walls around you. You can experience the home, you have sensory, you come home, the mood is set. All of those characteristics are very acclimated to the new modern way of thinking. We're not only doing residential, we're not only looking at luxury, we're branching out into overall redevelopment schemes. We're talking about markets. We're looking to build out large-scale shopping complexes that would really give broader opportunities to people in Ghana and then Africa at large over time. In our portfolio, we have direct staff, about 35, and hundreds of people working for us on our various site projects currently. And I think it's very important that you create these opportunities and you manifest your dreams, your life in other people's goals as well. All of our previous investors, buyers have been very, very happy with the output that we've been putting out there. And I've seen over a very short period of time, the 3 to 4 years we've been in operation, constant engagement with the folks that we're currently affiliated with. And our project portfolio has grown because of this. For the GIPC registration and the overall involvement with GIPC, it's really just getting us woven into the fiber of the business community and looking at it as a framework to leverage not just incentives and different initiatives that come down the pipe, but also to be knit into the family and the network, as well as the databases that GIPC has. It's a wealth of information, and all of that, the key to operating in Ghana and Africa at large is being able to access information. I would say the best decision that diasporans can make is to really follow their calling. And if something has woken them up to the opportunities that exist in Ghana, on the continent, they should really look at it, plan it out, sequence it, but definitely engage themselves in that. There's nothing that I think would drive me to go back and work in the corporate structure and look at how the world is positioned today, when I can actually build that for myself in Africa. And Ghana itself has given a wealth of opportunity to set up businesses, to register and have people associated with you that are as driven as you are. And I think everything a diasporan will be looking for creature conveniences, over time will be here. So why don't you come and be a solution rather than looking at the problems that don't exist or do exist? Being a diasporan myself and having been in Ghana for only a number of years, it's the best decision that I ever made for myself. I'll never look back and say I didn't take a risk, but that risk has paid off, and I'm very, very happy about that. Alexa, turn on lights.
Okay.
Alexa, turn on TV.
Okay.
Alexa, open the blinds.
Okay.
Golden Coast Developers is an example of a business thriving in Ghana. It hasn't been easy, but we've really found our footing and we're doing this for ourselves. So I call on all diasporans to grow in Ghana and grow with Ghana.
Thank you very much. Before we begin, shall we conduct a simple exercise? Those at the far back, can you kindly take the seats ahead of you so that we can fill the spaces in front of us, please? Those sitting far back, can you come forward? Hello. Can we have some movement? Mr. Benjamin. All right. Thank you once again. The Aftercare Forum that is meant to enhance the investor experience. And so we've gathered stakeholders who are key players in enhancing the investor experience and improving Ghana's credentials as an attractive investment destination. Over the next 2 hours and more, we are going to interact and understand more our roles in growing Ghana through foreign direct investment attraction and retention. I welcome you once again to the annual GIPC Aftercare Forum, and I am Isaac Boache. I'll be your host for today. To do us the honors of beginning the program, we invite Mr. Puku Mensah, the head of public relations for GIPC, to give us the opening prayer. Let's welcome him with a round of applause.
Please, let's bow our heads and pray. Thank you, Lord, for this morning. We commit our engagements into your hands and ask that you take us through successfully. In Jesus' name, amen.
That was short and brief. We shall now be moving address and opening remarks, which will be taken from a man with over 3 decades experience in investment banking and finance, a fellow of the Aspen Global Leadership Network, and a man who has partnered and led projects to raise millions of dollars for SDG SME Fund of Funds. And for the past 7 years, he has led the GIPC as one of the most vibrant investment promotion agencies across the world. Shall we welcome upstage the CEO of GIPC, Mr. Reginald Yofi Grant. Please, let's not clap. Let's stop clapping. Sorry.
Thank you very much and a very good morning. I'm not really a fan of clapping, so I'd rather that, we don't clap. I'm not a rock star. I'm a government official. People don't clap for government officials. So. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this morning's forum. Indeed, for many of our distinguished guests, our partners from the various ministries, departments, and agencies, officials from the metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies, many of our precious investors, business associates and trade attaches. This is a very important exercise that is long overdue. And it's long overdue because we believe that when you're in the service industry, you need to understand the full gamut and value chain of the relationship, and along the path make the necessary adjustments to make sure that it's conducive, it's mutually beneficial, and of course it moves on smoothly. And so I'm very happy today that you could all join us. The Aftercare Forum I was just speaking about today is a very important part of GIPC's mandate. Indeed, quite recently, at the UNCTAD Forum in facilitating WTO development, a critical element that has come is investment facilitation. And there's been an investment facilitation agreement that has been globally signed, of which currently over 124 countries globally have endorsed, and Ghana is one of those countries. And it highlights the importance of aftercare as a critical element of the investment promotion, should I say, activity of any country. Today, our theme for today is enhancing the investor experience, and highlights the need of investor aftercare and the changing climate for FDI attraction. Ghana has been noted as being one of the most attractive investment destinations in West Africa. And prior to the demise of the ease of doing business, the World Bank ease of doing business, we were always striving to get to the top. But it's tacitly recognized that in West Africa, it's probably most places to do business or to invest, based on a number of things. But partnership with the private sector. Ghana has a very active partnership with the private sector, and it's very clear through government policies and government initiatives that partnership is a major component of economic growth. And government policies have constructed mainly to create a conducive environment that enables businesses and investments to thrive. But sometimes we take it for granted. We, on the government side, we think that once we do a policy, it necessarily will assist the private sector. But we can only know when we engage the private sector to dialogue and understand what the real or true impact is. And so this is one of those times where we actually have regulators, we have authorities, district authorities, and we have private business people and investors in the same room. So we can have a nice and interesting dialogue or conversation about some of the things that we do and how we can improve them. The main objective of this exercise today is to improve the investor experience, and like you said, enhance it. And beyond the economic advantages of investing and doing business in Ghana, one of the key factors that makes Ghana attractive is political stability. Indeed, almost everywhere, political stability is probably listed as the #1 indicator that investors look at, beyond the rule of law. And as you know, Ghana is a country that has a real, should I say, love affair with the rule of law. Indeed, an investor once told me, Ghana is a country of 32 million lawyers. Everybody's a lawyer, from the taxi driver he takes to the person in his hotel. They are always, trying to investigate, digest matters for discussion. But we are also quite attractive because relative to the rest of the sub-region, we have a relatively more educated population. But we are also resource rich. Ghana has quite an attractive array of natural assets, from oil and gas, bauxite to lithium, iron ore to manganese, salt, feldspar, not to mention many others, and more recently, graphite. And these are resources which we need to leverage to bring about our development. And we are progressively and increasingly realizing that the partnership with the private sector is what will facilitate these into real assets that we can benefit from. Some of these have made us, like I said, West Africa's investment destination, and a destination for doing business. But like I said, we can't take it for granted. And so we are here today to digest and understand what the relationships mean. And in terms of collaboration between local businesses and international investors, Ghana has continuously engineered mechanisms for partnerships between international investors and local businesses. And indeed, at GIPC, even when we do our we go out to other countries in search of investors, we do go with the private sector. Sometimes we go with those who have already established in Ghana, and they give the testimonial of what is happening here. And so far, it's always been pretty positive. It's been very positive. But that doesn't mean we should just take it for granted once again. As a country that is very keen on ensuring a partnership between the private sector and government or the regulator, a number of initiatives have happened. For example, the Public-Private Partnerships Act, PP Act, which provides the legal framework for the implementation of PPP projects in Ghana. It also establishes a PPP unit in the Ministry of Finance to oversee the implementation of PPPs in the country. Now, PPPs mostly between the larger investors and government, for example, in infrastructure and large-scale projects, energy, power, mining. But there's also room for the smaller investor who comes into the country to do business. And it's important that we recognize that, because if you look at the structure of our economy, it's about 85% SME, SMIs. Most of the companies that we have are SMEs and SMIs. And so we need to adequately also understand how to facilitate their growth from the small size to medium size to large size. And it's also important to understand how the relationship between the small investor and the state can be better defined, better facilitated. Additionally, government in itself is keen to change the structure of the economy. And as you all well know, in the past, Ghana's economy has been predicated on the export of raw materials and resources. So we exported our gold, we didn't process it here. We exported our bauxite, we didn't process it here. Even salt, we just exported raw salt. And we, of course, are number 2 exporter of raw cocoa beans. But the government's view is that that has not helped us create wealth in the country. So there's a very important initiative and undertaking that we should add value to of these things before export. And government's view is that we should change the structure of the economy so we add value to all these natural resources for export. And it's just not in the minerals. Even in agriculture, government is keen to see that we process most of our products, our produce, and for export, because it will take us to the higher ends of the value chain and therefore be more put us more competitive as an economy. And of course, without a doubt, the partner in all these initiatives should be the private sector. To convert this country into an industrialized country, many policies have been done. For example, the one district, one factory policy, which says that if each of our districts, the 261 of them, should have at least one value addition entity or factory or manufacturing, leveraging on the of the region. And there are quite a number of factories that have been built in the past 5-6 years. But it's not enough. Today is one district, one factory. In the future, it should be one district, 5 factories, 10 factories, 20 factories. Now, that has quite a significant impact on the economy. First of all, you're adding value to your materials and resources, but you're also creating opportunities for many of our young people across the country and democratizing the economy. So it's very key and very important construct in where our economy is going. But from the GIPC viewpoint, we have many partnership events, many outreach events outside. We have many inside where we try to bring together the local and foreign investors. And we also try to bring together government to business investment partnership meetings. so that we can always interrogate the partnerships and what they mean to us. And I keep emphasizing that because very often, I know you've come and had breakfast, but that's not all we want to offer to you. What we want to offer to you also is the opportunity to tell us exactly where you think things can be made better. And if we are not, and there's a proverb that says that very often when you are drawing a line, you keep going without looking at your back to see whether the line is straight or not. And so for us, it's very important. We are turning back to see whether our line is straight or not. And GIP has had many functions that enable us engage and interact with the private sector, our investors, and policymakers. For example, our CEOs' quarterly breakfast meetings, which enable CEOs to provide or to convene periodically and engage in discussions on pertinent business matters in all related sectors of the Ghanaian economy. But I must say that one of the most critical elements that has come up in the past few years is when we are going to reform the GIPC Act or law, such that we bring into best of practices, global practices, and make it a regulatory environment which attracts for the best of the economy. We've also had the Ghana Investment Summit, the first one we called Spark Up, which served as an event for us to highlight what we've done and showcase some of the investments that have been happening in Ghana, and attracting local and international investors and encouraging partnerships and promoting economic growth. We also have the Ghana Club 100 event, and I hope that there are a number of Ghana Club 100 companies here, which we actually highlight and celebrate what we call the top 100 companies. And it's an annual ranking of the top performing companies in Ghana. And we provide recognition to that. We are constantly tweaking it so that in actual fact, indeed, we get the best 100 companies in Ghana. But today, it is actually voluntary. And so sometimes you might miss one or two companies that we expect to be there only because they did not subject themselves to it. But it's a very important activity for us because we also want to ensure that the good performing companies in Ghana are recognized and given the necessary support. And then, of course, we have the Youth Entrepreneurship Forum, which is geared significantly to young people and young businesses. In the past, we've had 2 days, 3 days in which we have mentorships, we have conversations with successful small businesses who are in transition to big businesses. And so we ourselves have been engaged in this conversation of engaging the private sector. And somebody asked me, but isn't your business attracting investment? And I say, yes, it is. But we need to understand what they get when they come in, because that will enable us fashion our activities much better. So how do we want to conduct this enhancement of the investor experience? And there are quite a number of things that we want to do. Now, we all recognize that many countries compete for and dedicate significant resources to attracting FDI. On the lighter note a bit, I remember I went to a conference in Dubai, and every country seeking FDI was represented. And walk to the conference hall, the biggest pavilions were the UAE, China, India, and the US. And they were also there looking for investors. You know, I was just saying to my head, that's interesting, because these are the countries that almost every third world country would go to for foreign direct investment. But they are also looking for investors. And it highlights the point that the world is a lot more interactive than we think. And so even as we make regulations and we create a regulatory environment, we have to do so competitively. We have to ensure that we remain attractive. And in West Africa, and indeed in Ghana, in Africa, Ghana has managed to create an environment that keeps it attractive. But once again, we cannot take it for granted. Where the policy frameworks are being engineered outside those who need it, there needs to be a constant reminder that we are doing these things because one, we want to improve the economy, two, we want to bring in foreign direct investment, two, we want partnerships with local investors, and all these are very important for us. And therefore, the aftercare business is critical for what we do because through the aftercare business, we are able to facilitate policies that induce foreign investors to remain and reinvest in Ghana, because that's almost as critical as attracting new investment. Indeed, if you don't treat those who are in very well, it will have a negative impact on bringing in new investors. But it's just not about foreign direct investors. It's also about indigenous investors. Create an environment which is conducive to the investor. And so, having gone through all the efforts of foreign direct investors or investors, it's logical that we try to implement policies that ensure that these investments are retained and expanded. Indeed, globally, it's almost written code that those who invest are your best targets for reinvestment. They're easier to convince because they're already there. Now, the rate of investors developing countries because of what I would call government interventions is approximately 25%. This is global statistics, that most investors respond to government activities and government policies that are introduced whilst they are invested. And according to the MIGA surveys, the MIGA was the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency surveys that were conducted between 2016 and 2020. Political risk was the most important constraint for FDI in developing countries and economies. That means for most of the investors that are there, one of the top issues they look at is political risk. And so political stability is key to almost any investor, whether the new ones or those who are in there. And political risk is defined mainly as what they would call, what the investor might term as adverse regulatory changes, like sudden changes in the investment policies. And quite recently, there have been quite a number of them for various reasons, like the Exemptions Act, breaches of contract between government and investors, and the inability to resolve these in legal frameworks. And then, of course, transfer convertibility restrictions, mostly relating to currencies. Similarly, the 2022 Government Investment Competitiveness Survey found that 45% of all investors rated investment protection guarantees as critically important and maybe deal breakers if they don't exist in a country. And so many countries, of course, try to guarantee investors stability and protection. In our constitution, it's already well expressed. I mean, government is prohibited from expropriation. And even in the GIPC Act, it's still there. And so we like to believe that we protect investments that are in the country. And for many investors, this is also key. I have many times been asked questions like, okay, so we did this investment whilst this government was in power. If they lose the elections and a new government comes, are we going to be affected by that? And I try to tell them, no, there's a law, and that law transcends governments. It's a law that determines the relationship. It's not the government of the day. And so we try to convince them that they should understand all these things. There's also the issue of lack of transparency and predictability in dealing with public agencies, and delays in obtaining the necessary government permits to start or operate a business. And very often I have new investors asking me, so how long does it take to register a company? in Ghana. And I try to tell them, well, if you go to Registrar Generals, I think because of the technology they've introduced, you should be able to register maximum 5 days. And at GIPC, if you come and we register you, it won't take more than 5 days. But they remind us that, but this is just a registration. Why do we have to go through 10 days? And so these are all some of the little things that for us are important for us to look at and see how we can tweak them such that we remain attractive, we are efficient, and we can create a very attractive and ambient investment destination, not just for people to come in, but to also optimize and maximize the positive impacts on the economy. Indeed, I'm mentioning all these things because it's important. We have MMDAs here, we have MDAs here, and it's important for them to understand the impact of these. Because sometimes we seem to think that when investors come in, they come and take everything away. And we don't understand that they rather bring, for somebody to leave his country, bring his money to build a business in your country, we should embrace them and make sure that we partner and get the best out of those businesses. It's not a competition. It's an enhancement. It's an economic promoter. Indeed, I had to give a talk somewhere to explain the impact of foreign direct investment. And some of the examples I gave, everybody was wondering, is that correct? And I said, yes. If you look at the past 30 to 40 years in Ghana, some of the main drivers of our economy have been mining, banking, the hospitality, industry, and technology. Now, of all these that I've mentioned, the top 3 or 4 have been driven mainly by foreign direct investment. They've been driven by foreign direct investment.
1, 2.
That's how important they are to our economy. Thank you for enhancing my voice. That's how important they are to our economy, but sometimes we take it for granted. And as you know, Ghana was mainly a mining country, and also, cocoa. Of course, cocoa, we are heavily invested indigenously. Most cocoa farms are owned by indigenous Ghanaians. But when you go to the mining sector, most mines was from foreign capital. When you go to technology, whether it was MTN, whichever, any of the networks that first started operating in Ghana, once again, it was foreign direct investment. Even in the financial sector, it was only in the past 20 years that indigenous banks came into the economy. Most of it was from foreign direct investment. So we should recognize the importance of foreign direct investment. It creates opportunity, it brings the best of practice, and also aligns you to global practices. So it's very important. And that is why we need to enhance the investment relationship. Indeed, when you look at the study of global best practices, 2 things emerge. The first one is focusing on investment retention and expansion, which I've spoken about, and features the deployment of aftercare programs. Aftercare is very important. It's not just bringing the investor in, but it's making sure that when he comes in, the experience is great, and he finds it very difficult to depart, but rather finds it easier to expand his business in the country. Now, but very often, investment aftercare goes just beyond the issues that the investor faces. And we've had very interesting experiences since we set up our aftercare unit some 2 years ago. We've had to deal with many of the government agencies, acting on behalf of the investors. Sometimes even the road to the factory is so bad, they come to us. And we engage the Ministry of Roads and Highways. We've had situations where we had an investor complain that there was a power plant next to his factory, and it was really rattling the factory floor. So they couldn't work. We had to deal with it. And they come to us. They don't go straight to the ministries. And so for us, it's very important to also set the ground rules such that we become a bit more efficient in what we do. And that is why we have embarked on what we call the Investor Grievance Mechanism for Ghana, which really is not just GIPC, but it's a practical solution package designed for government through GIPC to identify, track, and resolve in a timely manner interstate grievances that put investment projects at risk of withdrawals and cancellations. And this will enable us focus attention on the beginnings of investor-state conflict continuum. We want to be there once that problem is identified so we can work with the investor as well as work with government. And by the way, we are government. GIPC is an office under the president. So we work on behalf of government, but we also work for the investor to make sure that there's a mutually understandable and beneficial relationship. And we address the problems affecting investors at an early stage. Sometimes we preempt them by going to the investor and asking whether they have any issues, whether they have any problems, and how we can work with those problems to ensure that they retain their investment or at least expand it. So basically, that is why we are here. To understand what the investor grievance mechanism provides, how it works, and how we can all together build such that there is mutual benefit. Ghana remains attractive as a country, I can tell you that. Indeed, strangely enough, the past 2 years have been extremely busy because we have to remain out there. The job of an investment promotion agency is not easy at all. You are competing with people who are better resourced and who also provide you with the investment capital and everybody around you. I mean, I can tell you some of the interesting things that have happened. I'm not supposed to be promoting any country here apart from Ghana. But a couple of years back, Togo did 40 reforms. 40 in 1 year. And I had people who were speaking to suddenly tell me, asking me questions, what do you think about Togo? And I said, well, it's a small country, compared to Ghana. He says, yes, but they've reformed this, they are easier to invest in. What are you people doing? Sometimes also ask, what are you doing about Côte d'Ivoire? I mean, not to break your hearts, but recent events have made us a bit, shaky, and we need to correct that. And I think the investment grievance mechanism will help us do that. Recently, I gave a talk somewhere, and I said some companies that have been in Ghana for quite a while have had to leave because of what they consider adverse and deteriorating attractiveness within the Ghana market. So Coca-Cola has moved its factory, Nestle has moved its factory, Unilever has moved its factory. If we had had these conversations before, we could have rectified what it is. Now we are bringing them back because now we understand the problems that are there and we are working around them. And so we are hard at it, and I believe that this morning's forum and additionally many of such forums will help address some of the concerns that are there. We've also had issues of tax because now we are very tax aggressive. And our tax people are all over the place. Some people feel that, some investors feel that, oh no, it's overbearing and over, aggressive. And they want stability in the administration of taxes. So these are all things that the investor grievance mechanism will trap early and work around it. And so we are very happy and pleased indeed that you're all here. And I've been as brutally frank as possible, although we are government. Our job is to ensure that we create a very attractive and ambient investment destination for any investor, whether domestic, indigenous, or foreign, and make Ghana a great place to do business. I will always say that the Ghana story is told by 3 O's. The first one is opportunity. We are opportunity rich. Like I said, we have resources all over the place, but we also, 60% of our land mass is agricultural. So, that's another very important opportunity for investors. We want to add value to all those resources and even to agricultural products and move towards a much more efficient industrialized economy. The second O is we are very open. We engage and debate. And that is why we are here today. We just don't take the relationship with investors and business for granted. We need to work at it together and ensure that the end result is mutual benefit. And then the last one is we are extremely optimistic. We are very optimistic in the work we do and the fact that things will become better. And I'm sure for many of the businesses, 3 years have been extremely trying. But guess what? Within the shortest possible time, we are seeing the economy bounce back. We've had 2 quarters of growth that have exceeded the IMF projections. We've seen inflation drop from a 53.4% to a 23.2% in about a couple of months. We are seeing interest rates go down. We've had stability in the currency till quite recently, where we've seen a little bit of a blip. But almost all the macro indicators certainly are pointing the right direction. And we need to leverage on that. And that leverage that we have is that we can work with the private sector, we can work with investors, both foreign and indigenous, to make sure that we take good advantage of the opportunities that are there. So I want you always to remember that when you talk about Ghana, the 3 O's remain. We have the opportunities, we are open, and we are extremely optimistic. And I hear people say, oh, things are getting tougher. But guess what? Things are getting better as well. It's better, it's very good if it's tough and better. What is not good is if it's tough and not better. And so I want you all today to be open-hearted. Let's have a good conversation. And I think that the future is amazingly bright for Ghana. I see it from a bigger picture, and so I can tell. And so we want you to engage, and let's have an interesting conversation. But I can assure you, for those who are here who are invested, the future is very bright. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yofi Grant. Let's give it up for the rock star again. All right, so thank you for your remarks. We will take a 1-minute interlude, and then we'll take the next presentation.
We are indeed the center of the world and the land of the 3 O's: opportunities, optimism, and openness for business and investment in a friendly and safe environment. We are a preferred investment destination in Africa. To find out more about what Ghana has to offer, visit www.gipc.gov.gh.
Chambers, and then we have representatives from GIPC. And so we have a room where we have key stakeholders, and so we are going to see more engagement. To do our next presentation, as the CEO mentioned, aftercare services are very important, and to give us an overview of the aftercare division in Ghana's or GIPC's aftercare program is the head of the Investor Aftercare division, Madam Victoria Akosi-Akoba. Let's welcome her.
Thank you. All protocols observed. Mr. Grant, thank you so much for laying the foundation for my presentation. So the GIPC has always done aftercare, but it has in the past been ad hoc and mostly reactionary. But with COVID and with supply chains being disrupted, a lot of countries started to look inwards at already established investors. Our CEO in 2020 therefore established the aftercare division, which started full operation in the last quarter of 2020. So this forum seeks to increase awareness on GIPC's aftercare services. Since we started operation, we've engaged with about 200 companies so far on various levels. And so this is to expand our reach and to let a lot more companies know about these services. So the outline of my presentation, our mission, our services, our strategy, ongoing projects, and then success stories. I think the success stories come first before the projects. Okay, so as Mr. Grant said, our mission, our core mandate is to facilitate retention of investments and also facilitate reinvestment, encourage reinvestment so that we can generate new investments in a cost-effective manner. So like I said initially, so the rationale for aftercare is just like after-sales service, selling something to someone and making sure that they are satisfied. Because in the business world, you agree with me that a satisfied customer always is a good ambassador to bring more business. So even though GIPC, we are very active attracting investment, which is our core mandate, we also believe that taking good care of the already established investors is also very effective. So our services include engaging with investors, understanding investor business, building investor relationships with investors, and in so doing, identify barriers and stumbling blocks to the growth of investor business. We also facilitate and promote value-added services, like helping investors with fulfilling their statutory requirement, doing the legwork, follow-ups, etc. with them within the different government institutions. Like Mr. Grant said, in interacting with investors, we are also able to identify issues and grievances that may escalate into disputes, etc. By engaging investors, we are able to identify the early warnings for serious issues that may recur or may result with regards to issues and challenges that investors may have. So our services, we have grouped our services into three. We have administrative services, operational services, and strategic services. So like I spoke about before, for administrative services, this is to do with paperwork, statutory requirements, investors fulfilling their statutory requirements. We help them in following up with the various MDAs, and especially with GIPC. When investors want to renew their registration, they want to register, application for quotas, etc. We help them, we follow up for them. Sometimes they don't even have to come to the GIPC at all. For the ones that we get to know about it, we liaise with investor services and we get the process going. For the operational is got to do with facilitating issues and challenges that has to do with investor operations, be it road network, be it utilities, well, in the past exemptions. So anything that impedes or is a barrier or slows down investors' operations, growth, we facilitate resolutions to these. And then for the strategic services, we leverage on platforms to help investors with networking and linking with other businesses within their value chains. We also engage business associations, foreign and local. We encourage businesses to join local business associations as well, because it also helps with advocacy. So our strategy, how do we achieve what we do? We understand that we are just facilitating processes. It's actually the other government ministries, departments, and agencies that are implementers of government business. So since we started operation, we have been able to obtain from the various ministries and departments focal people. So we have a network of focal persons. To date, we have about 76 focal persons within 46 ministries, departments, and agencies. And these, and then we also acknowledge and recognize that investor businesses sit within the various metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies. So we are also in the process of increasing the number of contacts we have within these MMDAs. Till date, we have 11 focal persons here. So our focal persons have been very instrumental in what we do. They are very supportive. So through them, we are able to help resolve issues and challenges that investors approach us with. So most of the services we give to investors are some of them are reactionary when they come to us, and sometimes, most of the time, we do investor engagements. We visit investors, we engage and we talk to them, understand some of the issues that they are going through. We also do site visits in our proactive engagement. For policy issues, these are issues that we are not immediately able to do something about it at the time. But what we do is we collate investor policy issues, and then we put these into reports that we communicate to Mr. Grant, management of GIPC, and also sometimes through the board secretary, we also communicate it to our technical committee of the board. This information arms them when they have higher level policy dialogues at higher levels of government. So this is an example of a chart from last year's policy report, which we are yet to submit to management. So this this chart, I don't know if it's too clear from where you are, but the longest bar here is talking about taxation. I think I'll use my copy here. It's talking about taxation and taxation-related policy issues. And then the next one is local content policy issues. And then we have the fintech issues, and then road infrastructure policy issues, and then macroeconomic policy issues, and then land encroachment and litigation. And then we have the last one for hospitality industry. So this is just an example of some of the charts that you see in our policy reports. So as we engage investors, we just group these issues that they communicate to us, and we put them in a report. So in a nutshell, those are the services that we offer at GIPC Aftercare. These are some of the success stories. I can just, there are a number of success stories, but these success stories just demonstrate how our focal persons have really helped us. So I can go through a few to just let you know some of the issues that we have encountered and how our focal persons have helped that. I'm going to leave out the names of the investor companies, but I'll just tell you some of the issues that have occurred. So one of them is a chemical production company. They produce chemicals for construction, paints, etc. And they located in an area, in a Adenta area. And as soon as they located there, there was a water body behind the factory. It changed color. It turned black. So the locals concluded that it was from the chemical. So the company is polluting the water. And it became, it started with a letter from the company to the MCE, who was offended by the tone of the letter. So there was a lot of back and forth. They were upset with each other. The community were up in arms, started attacking employees of the company. They came, closed down the gates of the so the company wrote to us and said that they were being harassed. And the issue didn't seem to be going away. So we contacted the local government office, the district, and had conversations with the MCE. He was very, in the beginning, he wasn't happy about how the company had gone about it, but we also contacted EPA to do their own independent tests on the water, and EPA immediately responded. Took their team there, went and did a test on the water, and they came out with a report. So in the end, we had to go and meet the police command, the MCE, and some other people. And what actually helped this last interaction that we had to settle the matter was the fact that we had the EPA report. So this is an example of how we have been able to use our focal persons to resolve an issue. There was also an issue with ECG where an investor bought a facility, a factory, not knowing that there was a bill of about 1 million cedis on the factory. So when he acquired the property, ECG sent the bill. So they wrote to us and said that they can't start a business having a 1 million cedis debt. And I mean, ECG wouldn't hear of it. They just wanted their money. So we engaged management of ECG on various levels. You know, I mean, we went through, they gave us a whole, there was a time that we had to go for a whole lecture from ECG to tell us how they do their job, etc. But we engaged them about 3 or 4 times. In the end, they actually looked at the issue. They actually looked at the issue and they waived the amount. So the company was very grateful. And then the last one I'll talk about is one with a huge company that came from Israel. When they first came to Ghana, they were approached by an audit firm that told them that, they were the ones that collected all the taxes in the area. All the investors there used them to collect taxes. Everybody knows them, so they also agreed and started to pay taxes through this audit company. And I think they did that for about 3 years, and then GRA went to do an audit and fined them 3.5 million cedis for non-payment of taxes. And they were very upset. They approached the GIPC, that GIPC promised to protect their investment, and so, you know, they were very, very upset. In fact, when we actually met them, it was virtual because they had already gone back to Israel. And so we spoke with our GRA focal person who graciously joined us on the virtual call. And the company did a presentation showing us receipts that this auditor had given them, GRA receipts, against the fraudulent receipts against the genuine receipts. There was hardly any difference. You know, the signatures and everything were identical. And the company was very upset because they tried to prosecute the guy that did this. They said GRA, they are not getting audience with GRA. GRA is asking for 30% before they even look at the issue. and they were very upset when they tried to prosecute the case. It ended up that the court couldn't find the docket. The man was out free, walking free, etc. So they were very upset. But having the GRA gentleman on the call, he explained to the investor that there are certain processes and steps you have to undertake if you want to use an agency, an agent to collect taxes by the GRA Act. Did you look at the GRA Act and go through the steps that you need to take to engage the services of an agent? It happened that the investor had not done that. So he explained that to the investor. And then, the investor was not happy because the GRA gentleman just stood his ground that you have to pay the 30%. So it looked at the time that, the investor did not get what they wanted. However, when the GRA official went back to his office, he actually brought the matter up. And GRA actually took up the case and prosecuted the audit firm. So with that, these are just examples of some of the ways that focal persons have been very instrumental, in helping us. We have great help from focal persons from, just to name a few, Ghana Water, Bank of Ghana. There are many of them, just to name a few. As you can see, I said we have like 76 of the focal people supportive. So my last slide is going to talk about a few ongoing projects that we have. So like Mr. Grant extensively spoke on the investor grievance mechanism. So the investor grievance mechanism is on the continuum of facilitating resolution to investor grievances. It is aftercare. It's actually higher than aftercare. So these are grievances that, when they are not resolved, could result in either disputes, arbitration, or go to litigation, may even cost Ghana judgment debts, or could result in Ghana losing the investment. So this grievance mechanism, like Mr. Grant said, is going to be a tracking tool that's going to receive the grievances, and with the help of our focal people, is going to use various problem-solving mechanisms to try and solve these issues. Some of the problem-solving mechanisms include using peer pressure. Peer pressure meaning that the institutions themselves, peer-to-peer, will look at the issue and look at ways of resolving it. We also have a situation where, for instance, if it is an agency, an investor feels that they have not been heard or they have not been treated fairly, the agency and the agency's decision did not go down well, the ministry could be written to, the ministry of that agency could be written to, and the laws of that ministry or act will be looked at to make sure that the investor, both the investor and the institution, know the laws governing the issue, so that the investor will feel heard. So in a nutshell, so these are the 4 problem-solving methods. I've just said 2 of the 4. So so far we have had 2 workshops and 2 focal group discussions. That we involved. We have 22 ministries, departments, and agencies who are part of this project. They are forming the technical working group, and they are also our focal persons. We had 2 focal group discussions with a few foreign business associations and think tanks, including IEA, and then local business associations, including AGI, in these focal group discussions. We are currently at the validation stage. We are going to the various institutions, heads of the various institutions, to apprise them on what we've done so far for their official validation. We are also, with the help of the World Bank, contracting the services of a consultant that's going to develop the ICT tool, tracking tool for the investor grievance mechanism. We also have an aftercare manual, which is a guide for new and existing investors in Ghana. So the aftercare manual was put together with active participation from business associations from countries including Germany, France, Italy, UK, Spain, and Netherlands. We also had inputs from foreign missions from countries, Singapore, USA, Japan, Netherlands, and Australia. Government institutions that also took part are Ministry of Trade, Ghana Ports and Harbors, GRA, Ghana Immigration Service, and Office of the Registrar of Companies. So the aftercare manual is done. We are currently at the design stage. When we are done with the design, we are going to have them in QR codes at the GIPC and on our pen drives to share. We are going to get it. We are going to have paper, hard copies also printed. We also, with this aftercare manual, we're also going to have an info pack to go with it. The info pack also details aftercare services that we have. So this aftercare manual and info pack will be given to new investors when they come to register and pick up their registration certificates. We are also going to have them on the GIPC website. So with that, I'm done with my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Kindly note down your questions on all the presentations. There will be an interactive session for discussions or any notes that you may want to make. At this point, we will have our last presentation before the interactive session from a Principal Economic Officer from the Ministry of Finance to give us a presentation on Ghana's new tax exemptions law, which I know has been a contentious issue among a lot of people. And so let us have the ministry themselves come to explain to us the new tax exemptions law. Let's welcome Mr. Victor Kofi Beidu, sir.
Center of the world and home to the headquarters of the AFCFTA. Abundant
Ministry of Finance. I've been there for quite a while. So my presentation is mostly theoretical, but I will try my best to bring it down so that we will all be able to appreciate what we're trying to present here. Now, the essence of the Exemption Act was not to undermine any institution or try to bring down any privileges enjoyed by any beneficiary. The idea was to try to consolidate all the provisions in the various individual acts and make sure that they are brought under one umbrella and they are properly monitored by the Ministry of Finance. As you may know, an exemption is meant to confer on a beneficiary certain privileges and some waivers or exemptions from the payment of tax. And if it's not properly administered, people tend to abuse it, and then that causes a general problem for everybody. So the idea was to bring it all together and regularize it. So just to go through the scope, the background of this was to create a new law, but to consolidate all the exemption provisions that are scattered in the various acts. So you would have the GIPC Act that confers certain privileges to GIPC. But then you realize that those exemptions are limited. There are other concessions that other people are enjoying, like under the GRA Act, which gives manufacturers concession on the importation of their raw materials, which will not be enjoyed by somebody who may be under GIPC or may not even be known. But the idea then was to bring it all together so that anybody who wants to enjoy these privileges will have a fair idea and be able to enjoy the privileges at a set. So the essence of the law came from the legal provision from the Constitution, which requires all exemption provisions to be approved by Parliament. Sorry about that. So under Article 174, it requires all exemption beneficiaries to have the approval from Parliament. So if you enjoy any exemption that is not approved by Parliament, that would be an illegality. and one way or the other, government officials may find out and cause trouble for you. So that gives us the basis on which we can apply for an exemption through Parliament for any beneficiary. Next slide. So how are we performing under the exemptions regime? If you look at the exemptions regime, it is not only conferred to private entities or to government alone. There are other beneficiaries that enjoy exemption. So the slide over here gives you a general overview of how much money government has been outletting to various companies, individuals, government bodies, government organizations, and private companies. So the trend has been a little haphazard, and the downfall came from mostly the COVID era, where people could not import as they wanted to, or were a little bit disadvantaged in importing. So if you look, exemption doesn't fluctuate that much. Most of them are agreements and concessions signed. So if you have an exemption regime, you would expect it to be mostly flat. But then you see the downfall mostly showing during the COVID period, a little before the COVID and a little after the COVID. Then it normalizes again through the various regimes. In 2022 and 2023, we saw a small surge because of the coming up of a lot of the upstream petroleum people and also some mining companies. That is how come you see it surging up a little bit and then picking up into 2023. We don't expect it to change that much. It's going to have the same flow going forward over the years. Next slide. So I believe GIPC is the reason why we are here. So if you, if you look at GIPC's performance, quiet was okay. It picked up in 2019 and then dipped in 2020, and I would try to explain why this happened. There was an application of the law that was problematic, and if you remember, I explained that if you enjoy an exemption that is not rooted in any law, then it becomes a problem administering it. So around that period, there was a reinterpretation of how the exemption should be granted. And that caused that big dip because there was a lot of confusion around the administration of that exemption provision. So that caused a big dip into the exemption granted to GIPC. But steadily it's been growing gradually to get back to normality. We hope that after this presentation, we will all get to understand the way things are going to get it sorted out. So we will look at the objectives of the Exemption Act. So the main objective of the Exemption Act, as I explained, was not to disenfranchise or eliminate any benefits enjoyed by any institution. The idea was to provide an overarching law that would normalize and try to consolidate all the exemption provisions that have been scattered in the various laws. The other one was also to set the criteria for exemptions. So the way exemptions used to exist is that if a law is being passed, then the beneficiary sector tries to lobby government and parliament to get exemption provisions embedded in their act, which we felt was not really appropriate and right. For example, you would have the One District One Factory sitting in Ministry of Trade, and you would have GIPC administering a certain portion of the exemption. Technically, if you look at the two, it's almost the same. Most of the benefits were similar. Why won't we have an overarching law that would make sure that when such a policy is coming, we can have GIPC also tapping into it and allowing their beneficiaries to also enjoy those kind of exemptions. So this was to set a clear criteria so that exemption benefits would be properly known, properly administered, and well coordinated. It was also meant to provide an administration of exemption. Now, if exemptions are scattered, you may have a problem where you go to GRA and they are a little confused what to give you. Then GRA now intend in a way try to frustrate you by referring you to various government agencies to provide them with clarity. In providing this Exemption Act, GRA now becomes very clear what to do. So if GRA has a problem with interpreting any part of the law, they quickly can then refer to Ministry of Finance for guidance and clarity. And also, we try to add some small nuances to the administration of exemption. Previously, monitoring was a little scattered. Various agencies who administered their various acts were trying to monitor on their own. in this law, we make it mandatory and a legal requirement for people to report. Specifically now, free zones entities are required annually to report to the Ministry of Finance through the Free Zones Authority on all the exemptions that they benefit and other things. Other agencies are also required to report as such. Next slide. So this would not really help, but I will try to put it. So the section 1, which is the section 1 of the Act, gives you the objective of the Act. The necessity of the objective is to let you know what exemption covers. Previously, we assumed the exemption to be a total waiver. That is from maybe 5 to 0 or 20 to 0. Now, the new Act tries to redefine exemption by covering even concessions and rebates. So if you have a concession or a rebate, and the reason why I'm mentioning this is under the GRA Act, manufacturers are allowed to import raw material at a duty rate of 5% instead of 20 or 30%. This is a concession. Previously, that would have been considered as an administrative waiver. But now in the Exemption Act, that is also considered as an exemption. And GIPC beneficiaries through GIPC can work towards enjoying all these beneficiaries because of the new Exemption Act. So the Exemption Act provides the objective of the Act by defining the various requirements and regulations that are available to beneficiaries. The section 2 is also the application of the Act. So who does the Act apply? I would explain this in a later slide, what we mean by negotiation. I would explain this in a later slide, what we mean by negotiation. There has been a lot of misconceptions on the negotiation part. And then the section 7 talks about procedure for granting exemption to ministries, departments, and agencies. This would be more important to the MDAs. Now, we acknowledge that some MDAs may have projects, may have facilities that would require some form of exemption. This section was to address that, letting them know what qualifies for an exemption, what doesn't qualify. And if you qualify, the processes you need to take before you will be able to enjoy that exemption. So that MDAs would not wait when the goods arrive at the port, then they are found wanting, going to various agencies to see how they would fix this problem. Now, section 8 to 12 talks about the exemptions granted already in law. So the ones to the presidency, the one to privileged persons and other agencies. And then the 13 provides for exemptions to free zones, 14 to general tax incentives. And I would explain what we mean by the general tax incentives in the next slide. Please, next. Now, 15 and 16 talks about special tax incentives. And that is why I made a point that there is a big difference between the general tax incentives and the special tax incentives. The understanding we have is that there may be a general incentive for all industries. So let's say we pick like manufacturing industry. GRA has a concession privilege for all manufacturers, so long as you are registered with the commissioner. Now, if aside that general tax incentive, you want a special treatment apart from that, that would single your company out to enjoy a special benefit. And if you want to enjoy that, then you would fall under the special tax incentive provision. That would be a special tax incentive assigned to your company, not enjoyed by anybody else. And that comes with its own requirements and conditions. Then we go to section 17, that is executed duties, and these are for diplomats and technical assistance people. That goes to the 18. And then 19 and 20 talks about programs and projects for MDAs. So if you're an MDA and you have a project funded by a donor agency, a development partner, you can enjoy the facility here after going through the process. And 21 grants to private suppliers to contractors. This provision was inserted to sort out the problem of people who take contracts from government and presume that because they are working for government, they are supposed to enjoy some form of exemption. This was to clarify the idea that not all contracted projects are supposed to enjoy exemption. Those who are supposed to enjoy will have it embedded in their agreements or their contracts. And then 22 looks at the security agencies. So supplies to security agencies have a procedure to go through to be able to enjoy the exemptions that they enjoy. 23, 24 deals with the administrative and the transitional levies. transnational levies that are not exempted per the Act. And then we go to 25, which is monitoring. 26, the review of the Act. That the minister is mandated to review the Act within a certain time period. And then the 27 is also very important to me. Now, when you enjoy an exemption, that exemption is conferred to you, the beneficiary. The very moment you try to transfer ownership from yourself to another person, whether being it a gift, a donation, or just a giveaway, there are some requirements on you, the person who used to enjoy the exemption, to fulfill. Because the new person who is going to become the owner is not a beneficiary of an exemption. So an exemption is a deferment of the payment of tax based on a certain privilege the government has conferred on you. So when you are no more the owner, the new owner has to now come and fulfill all the tax obligations. It will not be the same as the initial tax obligation you were deferred on, but you will have to make sure that GRA is satisfied with the fulfilling of the obligations. If not, that would be a breach of the law. So I think this goes to companies who are enjoying some form of exemption. You will have to know that any item or privilege you get under exemption is conferred to only you, not to your staff, not to even you yourself, but to your company. And to MDAs, when you get an exemption, it is to the MDA. Even if you are moving it within the MDA to an agency, which is also registered for tax purposes, you will have to make sure you fulfill these obligations, either by getting a new exemption for the agency or the other MDA, or you pay the necessary taxes to clear that problem. Then we move on to the next one. Now, the very serious question: who qualifies for an exemption? So the Exemption Act provides for various people, companies, institutions, and categories to enjoy exemption. Next slide, please. The first one you will have is what we call the covered entities. Now, in this Exemption Act, we try to bring all government institutions and government beneficiaries. When we say government institution, we are talking about those who would want the exemption themselves. This is not talking about those who confer exemptions on somebody like GIPC. GIPC can confer an exemption on you, but this is those who would benefit the exemption themselves. So we are talking about the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, constitutional bodies under the Constitution, ministries, departments and agencies, local government authorities, public services, autonomous agencies, and statutory bodies. All these people are considered as covered entities. So there is a process for them on how they can enjoy exemptions if they have projects or they have grant provided facilities. B talks about the president and the vice president. So these two categories of people are exempted in the Constitution already. And that is how come they have been inherited onto the Exemptions Act. So for them, their emoluments are not taxable. And that by extension goes to the imports they do or their domestic taxes. C talks about diplomats and diplomatic missions. So these are also under the Vienna Convention, where because they are performing a certain task in your country, they are supposed to be exempted from your domestic issues. They are seen as operating within Ghana, outside Ghana, so they are also exempted. D talks about persons with disability. This comes from the Disability Act that grants them the exemption on specific items. So items that support disability are exempted. It doesn't mean if they are doing business with you, they will be exempted, no. So it is items that are disabled friendly, they are the ones that they are exempted on. And then E talks about religious organizations. So religious organizations are not for-profit organizations. So we anticipate they won't make profit. So they are conferred certain privileges. Secondly, there are some items that as a country, because Ghana is a religious country, we feel we don't want to tax those items. So those items are in this act specifically identified. Previously, it was a little blanket a bit. We defined it as religious items, but in this act, we try to narrow it down to limit what items can even enjoy the exemptions on this. But then, if you are a church and you mistakenly declare your surpluses as profit, then GRA will come and tax you. So the next category is for the donor charity organizations. So these are for mostly international or multinational donor and development partner agencies. It's not for, let's say, a company decides to be philanthropic and wants to grant. That will be provided for in the GRA Act, that is the Income Tax Act, but it's not provided under this. Now we talk to, the G provides for free zone entities. So free zone entities are companies who operate within an enclave but are well regulated not to move cargo into the domestic market. So it's a provision provided by the state to allow them to operate as if they are not in Ghana. So they also enjoy some privileges, but anytime they want to move goods into the domestic market, they then fall in line with tax incentives. So as I explained, these are people who, apart from the general tax incentives, would prefer a certain special treatment. For instance, the mining companies, they, because of their operations, have negotiated for special corporate tax payments and royalty payments. So they then fall under part of these special tax incentives. They are getting a preferential treatment aside the normal treatment that we give to all the other mining companies in the country. The J goes to baggages and effects. So these are for individuals. Now we realize that some people bring in goods. They say they travel out of the country and they are bringing in their personal effect. The law bring in goods. They say they travel out of the country and they are bringing in their personal effect. The law allows your personal effect to be exempted, so long as the commissioner doesn't have the feeling that these items are for sale. For instance, you travel to UK and you are coming with 50 t-shirts and they are all brand new. That presupposes you are not going to wear them. So if you are not lucky and an officer is very diligent, they may apply the taxes on you. But if your items are justifiably convenient, you are able to enjoy the concessions under this. And it covers most personal effect, unless the officer has any reason to doubt that these items are not for personal use. Then we have foodstuffs. So these foodstuffs are all ingrained in the Customs Act. They are what we call the harmonized system. The items that we feel these items don't need to be taxed, and those items are provided for in the Act. And if you go through the Act, it will give you the items that qualify. And under the foodstuffs, we have the next column that is for manufacturers and assemblers of plants and machinery. So there is a provision in here for manufacturers to also enjoy some form of relief for their importation of machinery and equipment. And we would explain as we go. And then fishing gear for fish farming. And these people have always been enjoying this exemption since I got in. Please, next slide. M talks about executive duties. So these ones are for the technical assistance I was speaking about. So I'll skip the M, N, and O. Those ones are mostly for MDAs. They will have to work with us. So if you're an MDA and you have a technical assistance agreement, you would go through the process and get ratification, and then you can now enjoy the exemptions when those agreements are providing some form of grants or facilities to you. And these go through both domestic and customs, international taxes. So if you have an agreement, let's say with a Korean government, that they are going to provide you some vehicles, if the agreement is ratified by Parliament as an MDA, you can enjoy the provisions under the technical assistance or the executed treaties. The P talks about concessional facility projects. So this is also with the MDAs. Now, we try to separate pure government-funded projects from concessional facilities. The unfortunate issue we normally have is when you are getting concessional facilities in the agreement, they are normally stated that you are not allowed to take some of the facility funds to pay taxes. So to be able to provide for that, government will have to now find money to pay for these taxes. It's like taking money from your pocket to pay yourself. So we decided we will make this provision for those kind of facilities. And they are approved by Parliament, so we don't have to worry. One person may sit somewhere and be signing these things. So if it's approved by Parliament, you can enjoy that concessional facility, enjoying some form of exemption, both on the customs side and the domestic side. And the Q part is for the security agencies. These are for security institutions in the country, and they are defined by the Securities Act. All these people enjoy concessions, not the individuals. We're talking about the institution. So anytime the military wants to buy some military equipment, they can fall under this to clear them on exemption. So one will ask, where are we with the implementation of the Exemptions Act? Currently, we have developed the administrative guidelines, and the essence of the administrative guideline is to explain to you in simple terms how and who and what qualifies for an exemption. So in the administrative guidelines, you would understand in details when we say a treaty, there are criteria for what a treaty is, and we explain clearly for you what qualifies for a treaty. If you're an MDA and you want to apply for an exemption for a project, we detail for you the processes with timelines, which the minister is bound by, which is even in the act, for which he has to respond to your request. We also state for companies who are applying to GIPC with timelines when they are supposed to respond and give you feedback on your application. So government tries to commit itself in the guidelines and also in the act to make sure that people are clear on what they are supposed to do, and you don't make an application and somebody forgets to work on it and is lying on his desk for a long time. These administrative guidelines have been published, so they are available to the general public. It's not hidden anywhere. And we've started sensitization with various MDAs and some stakeholders. We hope that we'll be able to go further and go nationwide. Now, this slide looks at the special tax incentives. The reason why we are skipping a little bit of the general is the general tax incentives are supposed to be instituted industry-wide. So if that applies, it would apply to everybody. This one is looking at when you want a special treatment, like GIPC wants a special treatment, then this is providing for them. So GIPC falls under this because they provide special treatment for their companies. Now, the provision states that in addition to granting a general tax incentive, so whatever everybody's enjoying, you enjoy, to a sector in accordance with an enactment, so any law that provides a general exemption provision for anybody, grant a specially negotiated tax exemption for strategic investments where the state takes a commensurating equity stake in the investment project. So if you read the original act, the commensurate equity stake is optional. It is not 100% given on a special tax incentive. The government can decide to say, okay, we are granting a special tax incentive, but for this one, we want a stake. This provision was put there because we know that in requiring for a special tax incentive, people may require too much. So a typical example would be the big mining companies. They have what we call the investment agreements and the development agreements. In those agreements, they are requiring more than what any other company would want. That would require that if the state is giving so much to you, then we want a share of your equity. And there are caveats to that equity requirement. One is government doesn't participate in any decision-making of the company. We are more like a non-preferential shareholder. We don't come in to decide what you do in your business, not at all. The reason why we hold the equity stake is to hold the monetary value we are giving out to you. So that, and the law also allows that at any point in time that you feel uncomfortable with the government being present in your company, you can buy the government off at market value. So technically what we try to do is to equitize the exemptions that we grant to you, so that in enjoying the exemption, we don't also lose out, because these are taxes that your competitors are also paying to us. So we're only deferring your payment from now to a later date under some special incentives. So not all special tax incentives are going to go for negotiations to get that. It is the privilege of the government to decide which special incentives are going to go under that. Now, for the GIPC special incentives, the priority areas have been clearly defined by Cabinet. And Cabinet specifically mentioned some selected areas that GIPC should look at. One is for manufacturing. Two is mining and mineral processing in Ghana. So any form of mining and mineral processing or any form of manufacturing can enjoy the GIPC special incentive. The other one is mining investment by indigenous Ghanaians. So this is a thumbs up for indigenous Ghanaian companies to take very huge advantage of this provision. D will be for the oil and gas value addition chain. So anybody who enters the oil and gas sector can enjoy the provisions provided. The next one is the real estate, property development, and road infrastructure. So anybody who wants to go into this sector can also benefit from the GIPC incentive. F will be the pharmaceutical industry. And then the next one will be the agro-processing. So when we say agro-processing, that is the whole value chain for the agricultural sector, including manufacturing, which is also captured on the other side. And then the last one will be the tourism industry. So these are the priority areas that has been approved by Cabinet. It doesn't mean this would be fixed for life. GIPC, if they feel they need additional priority areas, can always request to government. And if they get approval, they can also get that. And these priority areas are published on the GIPC website too, so you can have copies of this. So when you ask, where are we with the implementation of the Exemption Act? There is outstanding the regulations that are supposed to be provided, which the minister is working on seriously to get it through. So comments and opinions will be noted, and if approved, will be implemented into the development of the regulations. I think basically this is my presentation, and the source of my information is mostly from the Constitution, the Exemption Act, and data from GRA, that is your custom activities, and then also the guidelines that we provided on the exemption. So this is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much. He's from the tax policy unit of the Ministry of Finance. He's the taxman here today. And there will be time for questions very soon. Before the interactive session, we would also like to request that the media meets at the back, that's outside of the auditorium, for an important announcement. The media, please meet outside. You are meeting Mr. Charles Opoku-Mensah for important announcement. And also, we are having concurrently an aftercare clinic. We're also having concurrently the aftercare clinic. So the aftercare clinic is a special desk that has been created for investors. If there are issues you have outstanding that you need some MDAs to resolve, you can go out there concurrently and make the complaint. And for today, we have a desk for Ghana Water Company, ECG, Environmental Protection Agency, GRA Customs, and Ghana Immigration Service. If you have any issue that you need resolved with these institutions, you would be able to find them out there. And so, yes. So we'll now invite Mr. Kwame Kese Japan to lead us through the interactive session. Let's welcome him.
Thank you very much, Isaac. Good morning. Please, the media at this point are requested to excuse us. So I think media can play something on the screen whilst the media leaves the room before we have this session, please.
Center of the world and home to the headquarters of the AFCFTA. Abundant resources and limitless opportunities for business and investment. A great story of growth and attractive returns in a fast transforming country. Be part of this great opportunity and optimism. Invest in Ghana. Make it happen with the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, GIPC. Connect, let's talk, and guide you through numerous incentive packages for investment. investment. We are open and ready for partnerships to grow in Ghana and grow with Ghana. Locate us at Vivo Place Cantonment Accra or call us 0302-665-12529. Online at www.gipc.gov.gh and on all social media platforms at GIPC Ghana. Drop us a mail, info@gipc.gov.gh. GIPC, your first port of call for investing in Ghana.
Interactive session. I stand on existing protocols. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Mr. Grant. Thank you, Victor, for your presentation. When you were doing your presentation, I hope you were looking at Mr. Grant's face and the GIPC staff, because there will be a lot of questions for you concerning the Exemptions Act. So the floor is open. There's a microphone going around, and without any, listen, Victor, prepare for us. Mr. Sean Latte will start, and please, back to Mr. Sean. Thank you very much. We'll take 3 questions, then we'll take responses, then we take. So there's another lady at the back, and after Mr. Sean, Mr. Gupta. Yes, sir. Mr. Sean.
Thank you very much. This question goes to my good friend Victor. Now, the general incentives, we want to know when the actual guidelines will come. In the law, it says that the minister will come out with, let's say, an LI for industry-specific activities. That is where most of our stakeholders are, and they've been on our case since 2022. So it will be helpful if you can give us an idea as to when we can expect some good news. And as you know, GIPC, per your law, does confer exemptions on companies. I want you to clarify that. Otherwise, before we get to the office, people will be there and asking for exemptions. And thirdly, the special incentive, strategic investments. I think it will be helpful to indicate that it's for projects with investment value of at least $50 million so that investors know where they stand as far as some of the provisions are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Grant,
I think just to make a clarity, GIPC doesn't ask for incentives. In our law, and that was the GIPC law, there was a clause that actually said we could give incentives to companies, but we ourselves don't get incentives. So I think that should be corrected. But having said that, I have a few reservations that we need to look at philosophically. I